Good morning, everybody, or good evening, or good night, depending on what time of day it is. It's morning right now for me, so I said good morning. And I figured I would do a video honoring, celebrating, if you will, 20 years of PlayStation. Yes, I'm going to be talking about all the systems of the PlayStation, except maybe the portable ones, because I haven't really had a lot of experience with them. But I want to share my memories as well as my thoughts on PlayStation as a whole, the good and the bad over the years. So let's start with the original PlayStation. When it first came out, there were a lot of electronic companies that were trying to release disc-based gaming console. You know, you had the Philips CDI and the Panasonic 3DO. They flopped horribly, and even Sega couldn't succeed with disc-based games. So when Sony decided to do a disc-based console, I'm like, oh no, another electronics company is doing another disc-based console. I wonder how well that's gonna do. Well, I was pleasantly surprised. I think we all were. If you were around at the time, I'm pretty sure you were surprised as well when the PlayStation really took off. They were the company that got it right. PlayStation was the console that got disc-based gaming right, something Sega couldn't even do. They got disc-based gaming right, PlayStation did, and they were able to get the third parties that were upset with Nintendo's strict policies and the fact that Nintendo wanted to stick with cartridges. Um, Sega couldn't even do it, but Sony was able to get that strong third-party support, and that's what really put PlayStation over the top. Um, so yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I was shocked actually when the PlayStation became a important gaming console. Um, some of my memories of the original PlayStation were when my friend got it, my neighbor got a PlayStation, and I watched him play through the entirety of Final Fantasy VII, and I thought to myself, this is epic storytelling on the same level as Lord of the Rings or classic fantasy literature, and the score and everything and the scope of it. I thought that gaming had reached a point where it could be like interactive movies. I saw that potential before a lot of other people did. But it was Final Fantasy VII that made me go, that would make an awesome movie. And I thought, okay, wow, gaming could be like interactive movies. And then of course there was Metal Gear Solid, which did the same thing. You know, I loved cutscenes. I haven't really seen cutscenes like this before, and I would like, please don't skip it. I want to watch the cutscene. I mean, most people hate cutscenes, but I like them, and I think I attribute that to Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid. And what's interesting is that to me, I feel like the seventh generation was when the potential I saw in interactive movies was finally realized, um, because you had so many games that went that route last gen. And but I saw the potential in the original PlayStation. Another important PlayStation memory for me was when I went to see this girl in Port Charlotte, and she had a PlayStation, and she had Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. And well, I was really into punk at the time, and there was so much punk on that soundtrack, and it was another important moment for me because for gaming to me, because gaming used to be beeps and Game Boy sounds and NES sounds and even Super NES sounds. They still sounded gamey. Now you had real songs on a soundtrack, full songs inside of a game, and that's something that I feel is that I thought was incredible at the time. That has become standard today. So yes, and so I really like that. Overall, I think what the original PlayStation did was it made gaming grow up. Gaming grew up by the time the PlayStation came out. You know, you had the ESRB, which came out around the same time as the original PlayStation, and all of a sudden, once PlayStation came out, there were gaming commercials on adult primetime programming video game commercials constantly. I saw commercials of Resident Evil 2, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy 7. What was another one I saw commercial for? Because I sworn there was another one, and I can't think of it. I thought it was Silent Hill, but I don't remember the commercials for Silent Hill. Um, but yeah, the PlayStation. Before PlayStation, gaming was for kids. Sega was for older kids, but it was still, I felt like a preteen or young teenagers. Like, you would occasionally see something on MTV. You saw the Mortal Kombat commercials, obviously, but it wasn't until PlayStation that you saw video game commercials for adults on a regular basis, and you still see that to this day. That started with PlayStation. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the original PlayStation. I will say this, I didn't get a PlayStation myself. I had a N64 because I thought to myself, oh, N64, better graphics. It had 64 bits. PlayStation 1 had only 32. I'll get the one with the most graphics. Looking back, I made the wrong choice because there were so many games I wanted to play on that were only available on PlayStation. Like I wanted to own, like Tony Hawk, Silent Hill, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy 7, obviously, Metal Gear Solid, and everything. And another thing the PlayStation did before I move on to the next console is PlayStation popularized survival horror. It gave us scary games. And that is awesome. So yeah, PlayStation did a lot of good. Now we're going to go to the PlayStation 2, my memories of that. Now this is a generation that I really kick myself most for because I worked full time and I could have gotten the system and I didn't because I was too busy focusing on music. But anyways, the PlayStation 2 was an important system as well because the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 1 allowed you to listen to music and CDs on it. Well, the PlayStation 2 was the PlayStation 1 allowed you to listen to music. The PlayStation 2 allowed you to watch DVDs. Before that, DVDs were creeping up, but video cassettes were still dominant. But once the PlayStation 2 hit, DVDs annihilated video cassettes forever. Another thing about the PlayStation 2 was its games. The games on the PlayStation 2, you had Grand Theft Auto 3, which had this huge, massive, you had this open world city landscape, which was unheard of at the time, which is standard now. But it was awesome, and it still is awesome today, I have to say. But that was revolutionary back then. GTA 3. Another thing that the PlayStation 2 did was you had these visually overwhelming environments and bosses. For example, Shadow of the Colossus. These bosses were huge. We haven't seen anything like that before. And it's scary because I actually get nervous playing certain games because the bosses are huge or the environments are overwhelming. It's the same feeling you get if you're afraid of heights or afraid of the ocean. Where you just have this fear engulf you. Video games did that for me, and to me, it started with the PS2. Another visually intense moment, a weird and amazing moment, was in God of War 2, when your Kratos is hopping from one flying creature to the next. I looked at that and I'm like, this is on the PS2? Wow. So the intensity that I saw that I first started noticing in PS3 games actually started on the PS2. Alright, now we're going to go into the PlayStation 3. This is when I finally got back into gaming. I got a PS3 for Christmas. As you know, I've told you this story before, so I don't want to go too much and do too deep into it. So I just want to talk about what the PlayStation 3 did. I talked about this before as well, but I want to touch on it briefly here. The PlayStation... well, instead of doing that, I'll do something else. I'm going to talk about the faults and what started out as a fault but turned out to be an asset, in my opinion. And that is the PlayStation 3, when it came out, was too expensive and very difficult to program for, which a lot of people thought was a liability for years. But here's the thing. Once first-party developers figured out how to use the cell processor, we understood the value of the PS3 at that point. When we saw Uncharted 2, and how incredible it looked at the time. And honestly, I think it still looks incredible today. Once we saw that, I think a lot of people understood why they went the route that they did with the PS3, why it's so powerful, and why they sold it at a loss. Because, and honestly, because of the recession and the fact that we couldn't afford new consoles for a long time, the PlayStation 3, the fact that it took so long to unlock its power, I think helped save gaming for a bit, at least around that time. Because, normally around that time, the consoles began to look dated. But the PlayStation 3 at that time, 4 years into its life cycle, was just starting to shine, and it was incredible once it did. So a lot of people don't give Sony credit for that, but I think they deserve credit for that. I really do. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that's a thought I have on the PlayStation 3. I have other thoughts that I've shared in other videos, but I don't want to get into those because I've talked about them before. How I feel like that Sony is that the PlayStation 3 was the most mature console of that generation. Great single player experience, blah blah blah. One major downside though that happened started in the 7th generation and I feel is still going on now is that Sony, as great as they are with hardware, aren't as good with software. Not as good with online as Microsoft, as we saw with the PSN outage, which I felt hurt the PlayStation potential. And the PlayStation 3 could have been up to par with the Xbox 360 around that time, but I felt I went back down because of the PSN outage. Another thing I need to say before I move on to the next system is that the PlayStation 3 was on its way to becoming a failed console, but they weren't able to turn it around. This is the first time I've seen in gaming where a console that was on its way down was able to pull itself back up and really shine. So that was the first that I've seen of a console doing that, so I got to give Sony props for that as well. Finally, we're going to go to the PlayStation 4, and it's honestly too early to tell what's going on with the PlayStation 4, but because of Sony's financial issues, I think they're having a hard time trying to find a vision. They had an amazing launch, but now they need to come up with some sort of vision for it, and I don't know if they're able to because Sony is in such financial problems right now. So again, it's really too early to tell, so I can't really talk about PS4 very much, but we'll see what happens. And again, I never played the portables, so I can't really talk about them very much, about the PSP and the Vita. But yeah, those are my thoughts on PlayStation as a whole. And I have to say, PlayStation has been a great asset to gaming in so many ways. I think, and I hope that that Sony will be able to stick around, that PlayStation will be able to stick around, because we need them, and if their presence is gone, they will be missed. They will definitely be missed because Sony has been vital to gaming, and I hope that they're around for 20 more years, if not more. So that is all I got to say. Happy 20th anniversary. It's technically 19th anniversary for us Americans because the PlayStation didn't come to our country until 1995. But yeah, since Sony is turning 20 in Japan and everybody's celebrating it now, I figured I'd do a video on it. So that's all I got to say. Happy birthday, Sony. Happy birthday, PlayStation. I mean, not Sony. Sony's been around a lot longer than PlayStation has, obviously. But happy birthday to the PlayStation, to Sony Computer Entertainment, and everything they've done. And let's hope that they will be able to continue to be innovative, because that's one of the things that PlayStation has always excelled at, and I hope that that will continue on in years to come. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to do a video on the ESRB next, because it's their birthday too. So that's all I got to say. See you guys later.